There we go. We are making Café Annie's chocolate cake with a sour cream ganache tonight. And we are the POP. You guys are the POPers, my POPers. You're in a baking club just by sheer magic of being here and watching. It doesn't cost anything. All you have to do is join. And if you want, you can bake along. This recipe is on my Linktree. It looks like this, and I'll explain it when we get going. It's all in grams. And I have notes that I charted out and put on my Substack. And if you have to leave and you really are into baking and you want to learn more about baking, this is literally modeled after college level professional seeking students where I taught for years baking and pastry arts, and now I teach on TikTok. So every week, my viewers, my POPers, choose a recipe for the next week. And this week we picked Café Annie's chocolate cake with a sour cream ganache. We will use this recipe to go over some foundational concepts. And if you think that what I'm saying is a lot, or maybe you don't understand it all, trust that if you go back to my YouTube videos and watch my demo lectures, trust that if you follow along, eventually you will begin to hear the same concepts over and over and over again. You know, emulsification, time, temperature, and moisture. These things, adding things in three. You know, these things add up and become very repetitive. And all I'm doing is helping you to make connections from one recipe to the next, to think like the ingredients that go into your bowl and how those ingredients behave. Not all the time, but in this recipe and in concert with the other ingredients that are there. And we talk about understanding and being able to identify every ingredient, what lives inside of it, what it does. And then if you're going to take it away or add a different ingredient, you better know what lives inside that ingredient, what its ingredient function is, and what it's going to do to all your guys in the bowl. And that's what we're doing here. My name's Kathleen. I am a certified executive pastry chef. I was self-trained for a long time. I ran my own cake business. I've owned a restaurant, and I've been in the industry as a waitress, a cocktail waitress. I was a shop girl for a while. I've worked in delis, country clubs, you name it. I've done a lot. And at the age of 41, I went back to school. I got an associate's degree at Milwaukee Area Technical College in baking and pastry arts. And then I went to the French pastry school in Chicago. And so I got l'art de patisserie, which was a 6-month certificate. And when COVID hit, I just decided rather than teaching in person, which was not possible, and I moved, that I would teach people on TikTok. And I've been here now for 2.5 years, and I'm finally finding my footing. And so I feel really good about it, and we're going to get started and focus on the recipe, and we're gonna make a chocolate cake. I'm gonna get it in the oven. Let me get my oven heated up. All right, we're gonna preheat that. And then after it goes in the oven, I'm going to put together a chocolate ganache, and then I have a cake already made and the ganache already made. So I am going to put the ganache as a filling into the cake and then cover the thing, and I'm going to put a border on it, all in less than 2 hours. So I'm gonna keep it moving. Sour cream ganache is insane. There are so many foundational lessons to be learned. So you can get the recipe anytime from Linktree. You can watch the YouTube anytime, and you can go bake it in your own home, and you can begin to build your own practice of pastry in your home. Because the way that you work in the kitchen and when you bake is kind of the way you work in life. How you show up at the counter, how you scale, mix things together, what kind of consideration you give the entire thing, what kind of respect you offer the ingredients. That is how you live. It tells people a lot about you, and I think it's amazing. And so that's why I share everything I know, everything I've learned that's been generously shared with me. I don't gatekeep at all, so if anything you need to know, you let me know. We're doing Café Annie's chocolate cake. I found this recipe in the 1990s, and I opened a restaurant when I was really, really young. And I used it as one of the desserts, and it can be cut into a really thin sliver because it's very rich, and it's not flourless, but it's that rich. And it has it has cinnamon in it, quite a bit actually. And that cinnamon with the tangy sour cream ganache, and we like eating it cold, is just fabulous. So you only need a thin sliver. It's a beautiful cake. You can dress it up by piping a nice border on it or whatever. And I love it. We've been using it now for 30 years, over 30 years. It's a family favorite. It's my heirloom recipe. And it's from Houston, Texas's Café Annie restaurant. from the 90s. And I don't even know where I got the recipe anymore, but I love it. There's my oven. It says it's 350, but it's not. I have an oven thermometer in there. It lies. My oven is not, and that's why I use an oven thermometer, because it's the only way to know. Perfect. I always use clean towels every day. I have one for washing, one couple for drying. I buy a ton of them really cheap at Walmart. They last forever. I soak them when they get dirty, and I use them over and over again, but I like to keep everything as clean and sanitary as possible, so I put a fresh apron on every day. And these aprons, as many of you who are here a lot know, these are $5. So I have a lot of them, and I keep them clean. Some of you know I am a Serve Safe instructor and proctor, which means I give the test. So if anybody is ever looking to level up and you have a home-based business, get your Serve Safe, and not just the minimum like the state makes you get, but get the manager certificate. You need to get like a 70 something to pass, and I think that it's worth having it on your resume and as a professional certification. I think it's super cool. That's my recommendation. These are my ingredients, and back here I always gather my tools, okay? I just take a tray, I line it with the parchment, and these are my tools for the night. This way, I'm all ready. I've got my recipe scaled. I have my recipe here. I have all of my tools. I'm ready to pipe at the end of it. And back here, you know, I have the other things that I need. So I have the cake that I made. I have some ingredients I want to share with you. And then I have a cake stand, all ready to go. When things are ready to go, you can focus better. And focus, working clean, and paying attention while you're working is building a practice. It is working well so that you build muscle memory and make fewer mistakes. So this recipe, which looks like this, and they're written like this. So you are going to need a scale to digitally scale this recipe. And I have two scales, one that scales up to 20 pounds and the other that scales everything under 20 grams. So this is the other thing that I did. And this is on Substack. So on Substack, I put written support. So I put in here every ingredient, the amount, according to this recipe, which can change if you change it, but I just did it based on, you know, it's matching. But in here has the amount, the percentages, and then what the ingredient, the breakdown is, like what lives inside, the ingredient function, and how it affects. I also have over here the notes, the desired outcome, the method, more notes, and then how you evaluate this recipe. And this is a fabulous cake. On the other side, I have these. This is for the ganache. Same thing, okay? This recipe is intended, it's a 2-layer cake. It can be made in an 8-inch pan or a 9-inch pan. You can make it on the mixer with the whip attachment or by hand. I am going to make it by hand so I can show you that way. It's very easy to put together. And this particular recipe uses boiling water. Boiling water helps at the end to bloom everything, and it makes a very thin batter. So this recipe, in the end, its magic is in how it all comes together. It's this very tender, moist, it's not dense, but it's like heavy, almost like a flourless chocolate cake, but with a much lighter crumb. Intensely dark chocolate color. It only utilizes cocoa powder. There's no melted chocolate in it or anything. And it has a good dose of cinnamon and salt. The outer frosting is a sour cream ganache. A ganache is when you take dairy and chocolate and you create an emulsion. And I used to make this with chocolate chips, and you can, but I will be using bittersweet chocolate tonight, and I'll show you. Let's see. Bittersweet can mean anything because these numbers really mean nothing. These manufacturers do not tell in the packaging exactly how much milk powder is in here or sugar or whatever. We don't know. So this is the most bitter chocolate I have on hand. It's a lovely chocolate. I got this at Restaurant Depot. And this one happens to have a lot of fruit notes, and I really enjoy it. But the recipe for the ganache uses this chocolate. But the cake has a lot of cinnamon, a lot of salt, cocoa powder, which I also use, the extra brute from Cocoa Berry Calabo. And this is how dark the cake ends up looking. Look how dark it's wrapped. This is a cake I made yesterday. Can you see how it's almost black, even though I'm not using black cocoa powder? It's very dark. The chocolate's very bitter. When you add it to sour cream, not just cream, it creates this tangy contrast. And then there's also a good amount of vanilla and salt in the ganache. And these things work together to bring down the bitterness, to round out the flavors, to bring up the essence and the aroma, and it's a beautiful cake. I absolutely love it. So what I'm gonna do is start at the beginning with the recipe, and if you have it and have printed it out, what I do is I block the ingredients that go together. That becomes my physical way of managing the recipe. So at the top of my recipe, I have egg, 110 grams, milk, 241 grams, and butter. The butter is room temp, but I'm going to be melting it. And you can see I'm stacking them together. Then I have sucrose, and that's what I call table sugar, because it simplifies all the chaos in the kitchen. It's sucrose. And I have 432 grams. It's quite a bit. So this is a nice balancing of the bitterness. AP flour, 219 grams. The cocoa powder is only 85 grams. This is how beautiful and dark it is. It's absolutely a beautiful color. I label everything, and actually like this, because I'm gonna need hot water, so I just put it on a lid. That way, look, it's on my tray. I'm not gonna forget the hot water, ever. And that's how I do all my scaling, and I have lots of videos about it. What's next in my dry column? I've got 4.5 grams of cinnamon, and cinnamon gets old. Cinnamon is a volatile compound. It's oily, and if it's old, it gets dry, and then it has no flavor. So if you have old cinnamon, use good fresh cinnamon. And then the baking powder, and this has 6 grams, which is 3% the total volume. And also I'm using sea salt. My sea salt is fine like table salt. If you're going to use kosher or sea salt, you're going to have to scale it because they're different. And then I have the boiling water and the vanilla are going in at the end, okay? And I'm not gonna get the hot water until I need it, and I'm going to need to scale it. So I wanted to show you, this is a $20 bill, okay? $20 bill. I know nobody uses cash anymore. I had to borrow this from Dave because I didn't have any cash. These recipes are so expensive, okay? My chocolate chip cookie extravaganza is not cheap. Take $20, okay? Make your recipe, and if it doesn't work, throw it in the garbage or give it to somebody. But I want you to really understand that respect for the ingredients means. One of the reasons I chose this recipe is because I had a lot of sour cream, and I thought, well, if I'm gonna do a chocolate cake, I'm gonna utilize some of my ingredients that need to be used. And sour cream has a long date, but I bought a lot for the cheesecake I did. So I look around. I'm like, I have a lot of this chocolate. I have a lot of this sour cream. And I try to be respectful of food waste and of finding recipes that are going to work. It's important that you trust the recipe so that you know you are not wasting your time. And 20 bucks is a lot of money. How many people make $20 an hour? I know this is not a joke, and I take it very seriously. I've had to throw a few things. I don't throw anything away, I compost. But I've had to compost a few things lately, and it makes me sick. And I think I shouldn't have used chocolate chips. Like, I shouldn't have wasted. It's really, for me, a no-go. So I just want to put a plug in there that what I'm doing, I think, is important because it speaks to a lot of the issues that are going on in the world today. And money's money, okay? Greek yogurt would not be bad. And let me tell you how you know which Greek yogurt to use. You're going to match the fat. Because when you use dairy, a lot of the things that live in all dairy, right? Milk, cream is the mother of all the other dairies. Protein, sugars, water. But in, Greek yogurt and in sour cream, what you need to look at is the water content and the fat content. And then you can make a swap. Because when you make a ganache, the balance of fat and moisture with the chocolate is critical. When you have a ganache that breaks or doesn't work, it's because you have not enough water, too much water. You know, like if you take cream to make a ganache and you boil it and you boil off too much water and then your ganache doesn't work, it's because you've thrown off the balance. That's why. So this is how this recipe works. First of all, let me show you what I do here. Do I have this here? Yes. Now, if I've made this recipe a ton, I don't even need my instructions anymore because I know how to make it. But what I do, because sometimes, you know, maybe I haven't made something in a while, I map it out. And this is how I view this recipe. So the original recipe is on the Linktree and it's in cups and stuff. So you can read the method. But what I do is I go through and I mix, you know, melt, sift, and then you add the wets and the dries together. I'm going to add the dries to the wets in threes, in thirds, because you need to give things time to get to know each other in the bowl. And then in the end, I'm going to add vanilla and the boiling water. And that is going to create this beautiful emulsion. It's going to become silky smooth. And it's going to open up the molecules in the cocoa butter, which are kind of locked in there. And it's going to make it lovely. It's also going to raise the temperature of our batter. So when I put it in the oven, this baking powder, which is double acting, baking powder, as soon as it gets wet, starts to release CO2. But then again in the oven, at 140, it begins a second release. That's how you keep things moving upward. You get a really nice crumb. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna work through it. And if I don't look at the screen, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to keep it moving. The faster I can get this into the oven, the better. All right, let me show you a couple things. These are my cake pans. This recipe was originally written to be a 9-inch by 2-inch high pans. Back in the day, everything was a 9-inch pan. I do have a 9-inch pan, but I wanted a layer cake. So you can do this cake in an 8 or 9-inch round. The 8-inch is going to be a little thicker and the 9-inch is going to be thin. And if you make this cake, don't be alarmed if your cake's only that thick. We're going to put a good amount of ganache in the middle. It's going to be lovely. It's more of like a lower height cake that's just really beautiful, kind of like a torte. So the other thing is I use a spray. I'm going to spray the inside of the pan before I use it. But I don't use circles or buy anything that's a one-time use thing. So I buy full sheets of parchment. I cut them in half. I usually use half sheet trays. That's why I have this. This is my half sheet size. And then I take that and I cut it into smaller pieces. The goal of a parchment is that it doesn't touch the edges. So I don't like when parchment is all smushed up along the edges. You need to keep the integrity of every single step. So this does not reach the corner. So I'm going to spray it and then just put the parchment in here. This tiny bit of parchment doesn't need to be a circle. It doesn't need to go all the way to the edge. All its job is to help release the cake. And this cake's going to come out beautifully. So these I'm going to set aside and I'll spray them right before I need them. And then I'm going to use, to get started, I'm going to use my tammy, which has a very fine mesh for sifting. And I'm going to put my dry ingredients into the tammy. And what's weird about this recipe is the sugar is not incorporated with the butter. It's incorporated with the dries. So I'm going to put the flour and the leavener and the salt, half the flour, leavener, salt, and then some sugar because it's really heavy, and then the rest of the flour. That way it'll get a little bit distributed. So when you sift, you're not only helping to pre-distribute the ingredients, get out the lumps, but you're also aerating a little bit. All of the air that lives in your cake, the air cells you develop during mixing, during sifting, during whatever you do to add air cells, it's in your bowl. Once you put it in the pan and in the oven, no new air cells grow. The ones that exist expand and become your tender, beautiful crumb, okay? So I'm going to take the dry ingredients that I know need to go in the sifter, and meanwhile, I'm going to take my butter, which is unsalted, and I'm going to put it in the microwave and gently melt it. And when I'm done melting it, there's still going to be some lumps because you do not need to cook and bang your butter. You could do this on the stovetop, but I'm going to pop it in the microwave. 30 seconds should be more than enough. All of my ingredients have been on the counter since around noon, so they're room temperature, whatever that means. This is the messiest, most evil product in the world. This is cocoa powder, so messy. So what I do is I take all my labels and I put them aside. If I have a problem and I notice that something's wrong, this is my trail. This is my way of going backwards so that I can find out what happened, okay? And I keep them here until I know everything is in the bowl, and then I can pick them up and throw them away. So here's what I mean. There are little pieces that aren't melted. I'm gonna take the lids off. Take all the lids off. These are all of my dries. I'm not leaving one out, and that's kind of unusual. Typically, your sugars and some things go elsewhere, but for this, they're all going into my sifter. So here's my flour. I'm gonna put half of it. I'm going to add, messiest ingredient ever. Here's my cinnamon. Now I use my mini digital scale for all these little ingredients. And this is my sea salt. And I use the Boilan that you can get at the grocery store. It's a fine crumb. And then I have my sucrose, which is heavy. I'm going to put it on top of here. And then my all-purpose flour on top. And I am going to sift these onto my parchment paper because I use it as a funnel to get into my bowl. So let me do this. I could have used a bigger tammy, but the problem with that is if you're not using a large full sheet of parchment, then it can go over the sides. And the reason I am not using a large parchment is because this parchment I use over and over for different purposes, and I used it for my tray because I like to line my trays that I put my ingredients on. All right. So let me get a towel so I can be cleaning up after myself. A lot of people say they like how clean I am, and I believe you clean before and start fresh when you're starting something new. You clean in between before you start something else. And I really like cleaning as I work, and it's not extra work. It's just part of my process. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is take my liquid ingredients. I already know I have the right amount, so I don't have to worry about, you know, are they scaled properly? Because I already verified them with the recipe, so I'm on track. And I'm going to go ahead and take my vanilla label off, and I'm going to take the lids off of everything. This is my milk. I always work with whole milk. So if you ask what kind of milk do you use, in general, in the bake shop, whole milk is the baseline. It's what we use for fat, water content, and it gives us a really good baseline for knowing what's going on in the recipe. This is building intuition by using the same thing all the time. Okay, so this is a plastic bowl. So you're gonna need a whisk, and we're gonna do this by hand. Easy peasy. I'm going to put the butter in first because it's warm. And when we make this cake, we are focusing on a few concepts. One is emulsification, which is when you are taking two things that kind of don't get along and making them get along. A good example is oil and water. And if they are closer in temperature, they're going to get along more quickly, and you're not going to get lumps and broken emulsions, okay? So I'm going to take my milk, and while whisking, I'm going to add the milk, because if my milk is really cold, let's say it's winter time and my milk is cold in my kitchen, I could shock the milk and I could end up getting curdling. Or if it's cold, I could make the butter separate. So it's important to help them get along. So this is how I help emulsion. This is my egg. So while whisking, I am going to begin to slowly add the egg, knowing that my butter was warmed, but then the milk brought the temp down a little bit. Then I'm going to take my spatula. I'm going to clean this out, make sure I get everything. And then I am going to make sure it's moving. And now I'm going to be adding the dries. And let me show you, can you see the texture? I don't want to spill this. You can kind of see the texture is a little lumpy. And that's okay. But emulsification means that there's not those lumps, basically, okay? So here's where I take my parchment, like this. So when you lift this up, you have an on and an off with two hands. This is off, this is on. And I'm going to put about a third sprinkled in, put it down, and then I'm going to take my whisk, and with turning the bowl and lifting, just lift and turn. I'm not going to go on and on. It's not going to be perfectly mixed because I don't want to overwork and create more gluten development than I need to. And that means that the gluten that's in here, which is protein, is like fingers. And right now they're dry. There's nothing happening. They're all coiled and dry. But the second you give them moisture, they start to uncoil and then they start to connect. So what you want to do, and they do that with agitation. So what you want to do is introduce the moisture, but not over agitate them. The more they all start grabbing onto each other, the less tender your cake's going to be. So I am lifting and turning, okay? I'm not stirring and I'm not goofing around. I'm just lifting and turning. I'm letting let the tool do the job. And this is lumpy. It's not fully combined. It does not need to be until I get this last addition in. This is the third off, this is on. And when you add your dries in thirds, you allow them time to get to know each other. If I were to dump that all in and I ended up with a bunch of lumps, the lumps would be harder to get out and in fact may never come out. So it's nice to let everybody get to know each other. So this is going to be a little bit thicker and I'm just going to keep turning and lifting. And because I'm using boiling water, I know I'm going to have a beautiful, silky batter. And I think what's shocking about this recipe is it is very thin, but it is such a beautiful cake that it teaches you a lot about expectation and what actually occurs in the bowl. Let me get my hot water. I'm going to turn this so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to pull my tape pieces up so I can keep the counter clean. These are my tape pieces. I'm not going to these are my labels for my ingredients. I'm not going to put this in the garbage. I'm going to put it aside in case I have a problem. That way I can go back and retrace my steps. And here's my hot water. I need 245 grams. So here's what I'm going to do. I have a hot water kettle here set to boil. I'm going to fill it up. And this is my scale. And I need exactly 245 grams of hot water. And this water, let me see, 245. It's good luck if you get it on the first try. And this is filtered water, so I'm not going to throw it away. I'm going to keep it in here. I drink tea every morning, so that's my tea. So I have 245 grams of water. Easy. All right, clean up here a bit. Vanilla I'm using is vanilla extract. I'm going to make sure to get it all in here. Very expensive, especially nowadays. And then here is the trick with hot water, okay? This is a perfect example of how two things that are different temperatures are going to go like that. They're just not going to go together. So you have to just add just a tiny bit to get it going, okay? And I'm going to be very careful because it can be very messy. But it will loosen up right away. But if I start swirling this around, it will come out of the bowl and it'll be all over. So I can feel it loosening up. And using the whisk is really a great tool. If you want to use the spatula, you may, but I find the whisk works just fine. And I'm going to put a little more in. Maybe half of what I have left. And I'm still using the lifting, turning. There's no need for me to go stirring around, agitating the gluten, overworking at this stage. I just want to get the two different ingredients, two different temperatures together, okay? Once I get all of the water in, and I start to see it come together, I'm going to show you how I'm going to work on the center, just like we're going to do on the ganache. I need to use this water to make a core emulsion that will start in the center of the bowl and work its way out to the edge. Okay? So you can see it's very sloshy, very watery. I am going to do this. And I wish I had a different camera because it's already becoming silkier. Okay? I'm not aerating. My whisk is literally on the bottom of the bowl. I'm going to go around a little bit and make sure I have all the grains and the things that need to be incorporated. This is also beginning to melt the sugars and open up the cocoa. All right? Very shiny. I can smell it. It's very aromatic. So much so that there's nothing left on the whisk. Okay? So keep your whisk on the bottom of the bowl. Don't aerate. And work in small circles. Get an emulsion in the middle. Move to the edge. And you're done. All right, so here are my pans. If I were doing this for, you know, a restaurant or something, I would absolutely weigh out the batter, but I'm just gonna eyeball it. So you wanna use short bursts when you do this. We're not trying to go crazy. You just need to get it to release. And then as I said, parchment on the bottom. It should not go beyond the edges. See how it's not smushed? Woo. And I need to keep moving because you want to get this in the oven the second you mix it up. And you could do the pan pretty much right before you begin mixing. And then this is going to go on the bottom. So I'm going to estimate and pour it into here and then clean out the bowl and get it in the oven immediately. Okay? All right, let's see. It's very thin. I just count it in my head to 5. That's something I often do. But then I will also look. Now it would probably be preferred that I had a 2-inch side pan, but I don't. I don't like having a ton of different pans around, and I would rather have a 3-inch size than 1 or 2 2s. So that is what you'll have to decide in terms of what you want to keep in your kitchen, but it won't be a problem. This will bake just absolutely fine. I'm going to put these in and set the timer for 20 minutes. It's very liquidy. I think this one's a little heavier, I can feel. So one of these is going to be a little shorter than the other, I can already tell. It's not a big deal. They might just bake at a different time. We are going to make the ganache next, so let me get those ingredients. Oh, I have to set the alarm for 20 minutes. The timer is not going to tell us when this is done. And a lot of people want to know, how long does it take? How long does it take? That depends on your oven and a lot of things. So what I tell people is, the timer is to tell you something's in the oven, and then you need to develop your spidey senses so you know when something is ready. This is the ganache, and I want to show you, I made this afternoon. And I don't like people putting chocolate in the refrigerator, making ganache and then banging it in the refrigerator. You need to let chocolate do its thing. Chocolate's gonna chocolate, okay? Chocolate is got cocoa butter. Cocoa butter is a fat, and fat is like crystals. So in chocolate lives these crystals that when you melt them, you either melt them out and you have to reseed and build new crystals, or you need to, once you've made something with them, I don't care if you're making a ganache or bonbons or whatever you're doing, you've lined, whatever you're doing, your chocolate work, those crystals have to do their thing. They have to like restack. When they restack and reorganize, that's when you get chocolate that's shiny. So when you see a chocolate bar that's beautiful at the store that's shiny and snaps, that's a good tempering. They did not put that in the refrigerator. So if you are putting real chocolate in the refrigerator to hurry it, you're missing the point. Chocolate ingredients tell you what to do. You don't tell chocolate what to do. So I always say, like, even if you're in a hurry, or if you have this idea of what you need to get done, the ingredients are going to ingredient. They don't care what you need. So I made this earlier today. I didn't put it in the refrigerator. It was liquid. You'll see, pretty liquid. And now look how firm it is. I may even have to put it in the microwave in order to frost. Yeah, I'm going to. Or maybe I'll use the new one to fill the cake. But this is firm just being in my kitchen. And if you overwork chocolate, that's when it gets grainy. So we want to do this and respect the ingredients and let things come together. Form an emulsion in the ganache and then leave it. That's what we want to do. Don't put it in the fridge. I know, it's so good. I want to eat it too. It's just delicious. All right, so we're moving on to recipe number 2, and it couldn't be easier in terms of putting this together. And then I'm going to take this cake, and I'm going to put it on a cake stand. I'm going to show you how to fill it, cover it, give it a quick border, and then we'll pull that out of the oven and you can look at the whole thing and we can talk about it. That's what I'm going to do. So this is the recipe on my Linktree. There are only 4 magical ingredients, okay? I am using real chocolate. I showed you the Calibo, and it's 454 grams of chocolate. Okay, I really do like this chocolate. It is a really lovely fruity, and they're these febs or discs. And so these are designed to melt well. This is how I melt chocolate in the microwave. I start at 45 seconds or a minute, and then I go in 15 to 20 second blasts, and then I move the bottom. I don't stir. I move the bottom to get the melted part off and I put it back in. If you continue to blast the microwave at 30 seconds, a minute, and you'll get scorching, you'll overdo parts and not the other parts, or if you're really stirring it, you're going to take it out of temper. We want to leave it alone and be gentle. All right, so I'm going to put this in the microwave 2 seconds. Not 2 seconds, for 1 minute. And then I have a little spatula. I use a little spatula because when it goes in the bowl after I've scraped the chocolate, it'll still fit in the microwave. And it's microwave safe. If you use a really long one and you have to keep taking it out and everything, you risk making a mess. Okay, well, I might as well get these ready while those are melting. I have 480 grams of sour cream. Can you see the water? See the water? So that is sour cream. It's just like with milk or cream. There's water, proteins, sugar, which is like lactose, and fat. That's what makes up sour cream, and it's been cultured, so it's a little different than cream or milk. But it has all the same foundational ingredients. That's knowing what lives inside one ingredient. Let me check my chocolate here. So the first thing I do coming out of the microwave is I notice some things. This feels warm. Let's give it a shake, and I can see that some of them are sticking to the bottom. So I take this and I just move them like that. I'm not gonna stir. I just don't want that part to get scorched. And then I put this back in the microwave, and I'll just do 30 seconds because this is a larger quantity. I can't smell my cake yet, but once you can smell something in the oven, that's a first, inkling of doneness. It's when you think, oh, something's in the oven. So again, the timer's just to remind me something's in there, but I'm not using it for doneness or to tell me when the cake is ready. That is not what is happening. So I have vanilla extract and sea salt. And if you want to use kosher salt, you may, but make sure to scale it because you're going to get a different weight than sea salt. So I can tell that it's glistening. You can see some parts are melted, and definitely it's sticking to the bottom. So I am going to lift from the bottom and just make sure things have kind of gone from the bottom to the top. Not going to stir it, and it's going to go right back in the microwave. I love working with chocolate, but I just think it's super messy. It drives me crazy. There's something called a chocolate belt when you work with chocolate, where when people lean on the countertop, they get a chocolate belt. So it taught me not to lean at all. And also, whenever you approach a table, someone else has been working, it behooves you to clean the edge. It keeps you cleaner. I learned that the hard way. So these are our ingredients. I'm going to use the chocolate to add about 30% of the sour cream that's room temp to all the chocolate. Once that is tempered, meaning I've kind of introduced the two so they get to know each other, once it's combined, then I can add more. So you don't want to add it all because you'll get it seizing up. It's too much of a shock, too many different things. It's like you're on the dance floor and everyone's dancing and just kind of bumping into each other. But then if they play slow music, people pair off and they start to interact with one another. It's the same with ingredients. So the whisk is wonderful because when we talk emulsification and what we're doing is a core emulsion, the whisk is our friend for the cake and this. Look at how melty it is. And when I talked about the butter not being overly melted, we want the same thing with the chocolate. Just stop when you have a few pieces that are unmelted. Right now we have a lot. There are still a lot of lumps. I'm probably only going to need to do one more blast, but I have little chunks on my spatula, so I'm going to have to get those off so that they are incorporated, because things like that can mess up your chocolate later. The other thing is it's really smart to keep your bowl clean like this so that you don't have a bunch of thin chocolate around the edges. It's kind of in the center. Very important. All right, this is our last blast of heat, and then I'm going to make the ganache. And then we're going to put a cake together. The question is, any problem with melting chocolate via a double boiler? I don't have a microwave. That's fine. What you need to remember is you want to use the right tools, meaning you can use glass, which is nicely insulated, or metal for chocolate. But when you put this over the water, you only want a little bit of water at the bottom of your pan, good space between. Don't boil this water. This chocolate melts at a very low, like your body temperature. So all you need is simmering. And whenever you're working on heat, you have the right to turn it off. Take it off the heat, turn it up. You are in charge of the heat. Then, once you get it melted without over agitating it, because you're disturbing the crystal balance in the chocolate, the cocoa butter fat, you want to lift it up and dry it off with a towel. And then move it and get rid of your water and move everything away. If you lift this up and start dangling it over your other ingredients, the moisture that's collected from condensation over the simmering water is going to interact with your other ingredients and theoretically could get into the chocolate, and that's not good. Here is my lovely, this is melted, I don't even need to stir it. It's all melty and it's not too hot. And so what I will do, I'm going to take about, 30% of the sour cream, about 30% of this, and I'm going to keep my whisk in the center of the chocolate. I'm not going to lift the whisk, and I'm going to work from the center out, and it doesn't need to all be incorporated at this point. Now, if it tightens up on you, you probably have sour cream that's too cold. So pop the sour cream into the microwave or warm it up somehow, because you want the two to be closer together. And if the chocolate's seizing up from temperature, the only cure is to warm up the sour cream. So I'm adding half of what's left. This is tempering it in, and I'm in the center. And you see how you're pulling in from the edges as you move outward? So you don't need to go in all this haphazard figure eight and everything. Just keep it moving and then stop. You don't need to overwork it, and then get the last portion in. The other thing is the vanilla is gonna loosen it up a little bit because it's thin. If you want to use vanilla bean paste, you absolutely may. They're, a little bit different, but pretty interchangeable in this recipe. So I want to get all the sour cream. Ganache is not as simple as some people think that it is. It can go wrong very quickly, and then sometimes it's hard to get back. And there are different theories of how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to start mixing this in. And then I'm going to add the salt and the vanilla. Okay, and I'm going to finish it. And so because it's kind of cold here, I think I'm going to be able to use this one right away. I made this the last time for my son in August, so it was warm. And if you were to put it in the cake, it's just going to slosh over the edge. So you do need to wait for it to be the right temperature, but it is cold out here, and that's what's happening. It's solidifying pretty quickly. So that's perfect because I'm going to be using it. All right, so once I get it in here, and I have not aerated it, but I've used the whisk to create a smooth emulsion, I'm going to take the spatula and make sure that I have everything in here. Because I can see streaks of chocolate on the edge and a little bit of sour cream, and I want to make sure that's all in there. And then we fill the cake. And really, this cake, if you want to serve it today, you may, but it really improves in flavor overnight, and it's really good cold. So if you want to serve it cold, that's how I serve it. That you can make it the day before. It comes together very quickly, and it will only improve with time. All right, so this is nice and soft. I'm going to get rid of the whisk. This is sacrilege because normally I would lick this, but because you guys are here, I can't. So we have this guy, and because it's a little bit warm, I'm going to get a cork insulator. I'm going to check on my cake. We have 5.5 minutes left, and I use these cork trivets from IKEA because my countertop is cold. So I like to put this underneath because I don't want my ganache getting as firm as this. This is too firm, and I'm going to need to put it in the microwave to soften it, but look how firm it is. I mean, you could even use this as a center to a truffle. Oh. If you stir it or move it around without warming it up a tiny bit, you may make it grainy. So you don't want to be agitating it for no reason. So that's it. We've got the cake in the oven. We have the frosting is ready. Easy. So now we just need to cover our cake. And this cake will not get a huge dome. It'll be pretty flat. You don't really need to tort it. You can just build it. So you'll see when I get started. All right, here is my favorite cake stand. This is for cake decorating. It makes it way easier. If you're on the fence about buying one of these because they're like 50 bucks, it's 30 years old. So I take really good care of my stuff and it lasts forever. There's really not a lot to see in here. I'm not gonna open the oven, but very liquid. Not even really doing a ton. It's darker around the edges and a little lighter in the center, but that's the only sign of doneness that I can see. Woohoo! What else? I make, bake, ganache, fill, cover cake. All right, we're good. We are moving along. So if you are worried about this sliding around, I just use a wet towel or a wet paper towel. And if you clean this thing and keep it nice, it will last forever. So I'm going to show you just how simple and easy it is to cover a cake without overthinking it. And you can get fancy. And this is a good opportunity to do a look. The beauty is taking a foundation color and then doing a lot of like ruffles and shells and things on it, and then finishing it with a little bit of color. You know, this would look beautiful with like edible violets, and the chocolate and the purple would look really pretty. So this is the kind of cake you can overpipe, it's called. You can do a nice smooth base and then go crazy on the additional stuff. All right. So I'm gonna take just a little bit of ganache, and look how it's firming up even now. It's firming up, my gosh, it's so smooth and oh, it's glistening. So it's firming up. It was just liquidy and it's like this, okay? All right, I'm gonna go check the cake and then I'm going to alter the time. All right, I'm gonna give it 10. Because I did bake this yesterday and I know it's gonna need at least 10. So I'm gonna do this really fast. It's not a cake decorating lesson. I'm gonna show you how quick you can get this done, and if you take away a tip or have a question, I'm happy to answer it. So what we wanna do is take just a little bit of icing and put it here. It kind of holds the cake. Now, it's terrible, but my 2 layers are not the same width. I hate that. I think they should be. But what I'm gonna do is put the more solid or thick one on the bottom. And I only wrapped these once yesterday after they were 100% cool. And I left them on the countertop overnight. And if you do that, you leave them on the counter, do not refrigerate them. But if you want to store them longer than a day, you need to freeze them. You want to bring them completely to cool and then wrap them 2 times and label them. So I'm gonna put this right here. And in order to know if your cake is in the center, you have to get above it and look. That's pretty much in the center. Okay, so I can use, because every time I make this, I think I don't make enough ganache. Now, theoretically there is, but if you're not super good at finishing a cake, you might find it to be kind of thin. So you might want to make a double batch of this or something. But because I have the second part, I know I have enough. But I really like the inside to be thick. Because I think when you cut it, it looks really cool. So I use my offset spatula, which is, I don't use anything else. I'm not super fancy when it comes to tools for cake decorating. And I made a lot of wedding cakes, and I could do a giant entire cake just with this little guy. 4-inch offset, it's my favorite. Okay, so I am just going to smooth this to the edge and then put the top on upside down so it's flat. And the reason I'm so concerned that the cake is level is because I don't like when you get a slice of cake and the edge has it goes in with a ton of, it's uneven. You can see it doesn't look good. So you need to think about making sure that your cake looks good at every step along the way. So when you slice it, it looks like a picture. It looks beautiful. It could go in a magazine. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you should want it to be. So you should imagine the inside of your cake. And when you slice it and it's gorgeous and you add a little raspberry puree and whatever else you want to it, people are going to really maybe not even be able to verbalize what makes your cake look great, but it is going to be the thing that makes your cake look more professional, and it's going to be really nice. So the fact that I am going to have a shorter one and a thicker one is not going to look good on the plate. So that's why if I were doing it for money or being more careful or whatever, I would definitely scale it out so that when it's cut, it looks good. I had to one time for a magazine do a cake, and I torted it, which is when you cut it real thin, into several layers with bright jam in it, so it was very contrasty. I spent a long time on that and it looked really good. And I also took a class with Maggie Austin, and if you don't know who she is, look her up. She's an amazing cake designer. But I asked her, because she talked about, she didn't show us how she filled and got her cakes perfect, but I remember, and her cakes start at $8,000 a piece, no matter how small they are. And I remember saying, how do you have time for that? And she was like, I can spend as much time as I want. And I was like, oh, that's the difference between an $8,000 cake and a cake that, I'm doing. But ultimately, if someone's not paying you for how it looks and they're paying you for how it tastes, you just want everything to align. The quality of the ingredients you use, the care and time that you put into making your cake will be reflected in every detail. And I think that elevates what we're doing. I mean, look how much time I'm taking to do this. So I'm going to take my layer and I'm going to flip it upside down and put it right on there. And I'm not going to smush it down. I don't need to smush it down. Gravity's going to smush it down. But I am going to look at it and make sure that it's this way. Because when we look at a cake for straightness, we're looking this. It needs to be level. And we're looking here. This should be straight all the way around. And the top should be level. That's it. It looks great. Okay, so now I get rid of my plastic. Get rid of my scrap. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking about my cake. I haven't forgotten it. So then what I am going to do is take the frosting, the ganache, I'm going to put it on the top, and then I'm going to gently push it toward the edge, and I'm going to fill in these areas. There are gaps. But instead of pushing this down and smushing things, I'm going to let nature take its course. So I'm not going to put all of this on here, and it's thickening up, it's hardening so quickly. I'm going to put a good amount. Then I'm going to take my guy, and I need a clean new towel. So I take a clean new towel that I'm going to wipe off the frosting, the ganache, in between. And I want you to wring this towel out a lot. There should not be any water streaks on my guy after I wipe this off. It's not like that. It's to, when you have frosting on here, it creates a tension that pulls your frosting, and this way when you remove it, you get a smoother thing. Then you scrape it and you wipe it. That's how you do it. So I'm going to go real quick and just go around. I push this all to the edge. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to push this over the edge, and it's firming up a lot. Oop, I didn't want to do that because it makes it messy. Okay, so I let it fall down, and I'm not pushing hard. I'm just letting it fall and kind of going back and forth. Let it fall. And see how there's gaps and holes? I'm going to use this to just go back and forth, but I'm not going to push. I'm not going to be aggressive, but I am going to make sure that it's in there. Before I begin worrying about the cake, I'm going to worry about that gap. And it's so velvety and beautiful. If you have any lumps, bumps, or whatever's going on, you don't have a good emulsion. So you're definitely going to want to think about what happened. Go back, deconstruct your work, and start over. Wipe off my spatula and then wipe it with my towel so it's got clean. And then I'm going to go around and go back and forth, okay? You don't want this way. You don't push away from you. The reason I'm doing this is because I can see it. I'm pulling it toward me, and if I start pushing it that way, I can't see what's happening on the other side. So I can see what's going on here, and I'm going to go around like that, and I'm going to go check my cake. My icing is really hardening, so that's why I'm kind of ignoring the oven, because I know it's okay. I'm wiping it off on my towel, and I'm going to clean this up so I don't end up with a really hard problem here. Okay. The good thing about this is we don't have to really put it in the refrigerator for our crumb coat because it's going to firm up really nice. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit off, and then I'm going to give it the final coat when I get back here. So when you ice, and if you're icing a cold cake, I know a lot of you like to freeze your cakes and then ice them, and especially if you're using ganache or a buttercream made from real butter, you are going to find that it hardens up on the cold cake and it kind of creates another problem. That's why I always say you need to learn what you're doing at the step that you're at so that you're learning the skills, so that if you are ever in a situation where your trick or your gadget isn't there, you know, you can still function. All right, so let's go check our cake. So I'm going to open this real quick. Here's what's going on. It's starting to firm up, getting some bubbles. So I have a cake that is not covered. Okay, you could call that a crumb coat. And just so you know, chocolate cakes in general are known to have more crumbs. Like it's a lot harder to frost a chocolate cake and not get the crumbs in it, but not this cake. This cake is not like a devil's food cake. It's not an American butter-based creaming method high ratio cake like you get for birthdays, or you know, a devil's food type cake that you would think of as a birthday cake. This is more like a torte. Okay, so there are fewer crumbs. So what I'm going to do is take some clean paper towel and I'm going to clean up the cake stand now and get some of this cleaned up, and then I'm going to do a final cover, and then I'm going to do some piping. Okay, paper towel, you can dip your hand in water if you want, but you're just going to kind of scrape it up. Now, if you are doing this and you're wondering what is the point of a crumb coat, it is literally to seal in the crumbs and the exchange of moisture and air. So right now, if you were to put this in the refrigerator overnight thinking, oh, I'll finish frosting it tomorrow, it would dry out. And it would, because where your cake meets your stand needs to be filled in like this. All of this needs to be covered. So when you picture, is my cake ready for the refrigerator? It needs to be completely covered. No holes, no air gaps, okay? Because those are going to allow the exchange of moisture from the refrigerator and you're going to get degradation. Okay, so this is pretty firm and I'm not loving it. You see how firm it is? Too firm. So I am going to throw it in the microwave for 15 seconds. So let me gently mix this together. It got really soft, okay? Really soft. I don't want to overdo it, but even look how it's hard on the spatula and a different color than it is in the bowl. Look at that. So I'm going to scrape it off and I'm going to incorporate these things together. And the cold is actually going to, you know, cool down the hotter parts, and the hotter parts are going to warm up the hard part. All right. So this is turning back into a ganache, and I just want to make sure that I don't have any lumps. And even if you do, it'll be fine. So when I put this on here, in fact, what's amazing is this color is different than when it is warm. So look how that is. You can tell, much looser. All right, so here we go. So I have plenty to do everything I want to do with. So I'm going to go ahead, and as I move this around, I know it's cooling off as it touches. And that's okay. I'm just going to let it cool off because that helps me get it to the edge. But also, when you are working with this spatula, see my hand here, my finger? This becomes, the tip is what becomes your driver. That's why I like a tapered rolling pin. So when I'm doing my cake, I can use this and hold it straight and go all the way around, get it straight, or I can tilt it in a little bit to get the bottom, or tilt it a little this way to get it straight. It becomes a very useful tool. Is that 5 minutes already? Holy cow, let me go see what's going on here. It's so funny how fast time goes. It's still wet, so I'm going to give it another 5 minutes, but one of these is the thinner one's going to come out before the other one. Let's get this done before it gets cold on here, okay? All right, so I'm gonna let some of this fall. And if you overwork this, you're going to notice that the ganache begins to get grainy. So you wanna just get it on and then leave it alone. This is not one of those cakes you're going to ice and scrape off and start over and scrape off and start over, because you will end up with a grainy mess. It won't look smooth and pretty. So like I said, I'm tilting it to get it around the bottom, and I will go when I get it all covered and I will scrape off a little bit, and I'm just gonna leave it. It's gonna be smooth. Make sure to get it in around the bottom. So then I'm just gonna, now I have this all on. It's a little bit messy. I've got the whole cake covered though. And then I'm gonna go around and smooth it out. Okay. So ultimately, if I look at this cake from here and I see that it's straight and it looks straight to me, it's not this way, it's not that way, it's good. So I'm gonna wipe this off on my clean towel, nice clean, and I'm going to go around and use the actual turntable to move. I'm holding the knife straight and then moving the turntable. So you have to let your tools do the job for you, and it'll help you become skilled much quicker. And this is I made it very soft. If you're having problems, you know, with the consistency, you will figure it out. But I'm not gonna lie and tell you that this is not somewhat advanced in terms of making sure you can handle something this loose. But it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, it's gonna be really good. And so you could use other tools, scrapers, you know, all kinds of fancy tools to make the edge of your cake look good. This is just how I do it, and I don't feel the need. I used to do incredibly elaborate sugar flowers and things like that for years. So I'm gonna clean up the edge, then I'm gonna clean up the sides, and then we're gonna do the top, and I'm gonna call it done. And I know that I'm gonna be putting a border on here, so you don't have to go right up to the edge. Just need to get it clean enough so it's not, you can't see it once the border's on. And when you use a dry paper towel, it really does clean up really nice. You can get all the smudges off. Okay, so now I'm gonna go through and clean it up. So can you see a little bit of the cake? Yeah, you can see a tiny bit of the cake. I'm okay with it. Now I'm gonna clean up the top. I start with the thickest area, boom. And I have a lot of frosting on here, so you don't necessarily need to put as much on as I did. Just trying to get it done fast. And if you make one batch, you're going to think you don't have enough icing. So I do recommend if you're nervous about that, or you want thicker icing on the edges, you're going to want to double or maybe 150% your recipe. And I will be done soon, and we can chat. And I can answer all. See, it's starting to get fussy because of the temperature. If I keep going over this, it's going to get grainy. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is put this into a bag and pipe it real quick and make it look nice. All right, let me go grab one cake. All right, there we go. Okay, it's a little bubbly, it's shiny. So the cake is coming off the sides just a little bit. I don't know if you can see. It starts to pull away. Is take my pastry bag and just a standard star tip. Put it in the bottom. All the way to the bottom. It's a round. So I'm going to cut around, pull off the tip and get it in the garbage. It's a food safety hazard. And because I still have soft ganache, I'm going to use that. But I think I need to soften some of this up and add it because I'm not going to have enough to do the whole cake. So I twist this a little bit, put it into my deli cup, do this, and that way I can fill this up and keep everything clean. Right. So I'm going to put 15 seconds or so and put this into my pastry bag. Now I could get lumps, but it's going to be pretty forgiving in the piping. Clean this all out. So see, this is one batch. It kind of gives you an idea of how much it made. So you decide, and if you have too much, you can refrigerate it, make little truffle centers, which will be delicious. So again, this is going to be soft on the bottom from the microwave, so I'm going to move it around. And even on the inside, you can see it melts. Microwaves are so weird. You could soften this over a really gentle bain-marie, but I'm going to put it in the microwave for just a couple more seconds. And this border is going to go on so fast, and it's going to look so great. And I'm just going to use my stirrer to get it going here. All right, I want this to be relatively even, distributed. Don't want to overwork it. And then I'm going to put some into my pastry bag. All right, let me clean up a little bit here. It drives me crazy. So here's what we do. Scraper. All I do is pull this up. Squeeze it downward. And then scrape the back of the bag to keep everything clean. This is off, this is on, okay? I'm gonna move you over here. I know that thing is gonna go off. So I'm gonna grab it and not show it to you till after I finish this, just to know. All right, here's my chocolate cake. And I'm going to do the border. I'm gonna start on the bottom. I'm gonna choose a back, which basically probably has lumps, bumps, or something I don't like about it. So this will go on incredibly glistening, easy, it's pipeable. If I let it get cold, it's going to go beyond pipeable. And that's why the texture of this in the refrigerator is so lovely. And you can choose if you want to just use a round or a bag with no tip, you can still do a beautiful pearl border. And you can make it lay down on the cake tray, the stand or upright. You can make it smaller and you can do other over piping. Let me grab the cake. See how my bag is off? It's not going to spill. So this one's a lot fuller. You see that? So I'm just going to put it over here on the rack and I will get to it in 2 seconds. So now this is my back. Sometimes I put a toothpick on the back. That way when you deliver it, or if you forget where the back is, it's a reminder. Okay, so I'm going to start where the back is here, and I want this to go upright, not off to the side. I want it up. So this is how I'm going to pipe it. Very perpendicular, upright. I do it more naturally to my natural style. And you can do it any way you like. And when this is refrigerated and when it firms up, it's going to look a little different. The color is going to lighten up just a tiny bit. And you can take real chocolate and do, I'm a mystery person. You can do some pretty squiggles, or you can write on it using melted chocolate. It'll go nicely on here. And I could take a different tip that's smaller and do some over piping. And I could also use some beautiful chocolate pearls or cocoa nibs to sprinkle around to make it look pretty. And then I'm going to take this and it goes right in here. It stays clean. I'll take my cakes out and then we can talk, which will be lovely. Ganaches freeze very well, and I can use it on a different day. I could use it to put on cupcakes. And this cake makes really nice cupcakes, just to know, which is really great to know. I've got my leftover ganache. I'm going to store that. I have my leftover ganache in here that I'll squeeze out and eventually use. are always so much heavier than I think they're gonna be. Okay, here are my cooling racks, and here's my cake. Okay, so here we go. Flip it out. I'm gonna take the parchment off. This is really thin. And then I'm gonna flip it over, okay? It's very hot. Whew, too hot. So I'm gonna take another, and I'm gonna flip it. So the bottom is up. We're gonna let it cool, and then we can talk about it. So it's a very forgiving cake, very easy to make, tastes delicious, I love it. All right there, woohoo, we did it. So we've got this cake that we just made. Okay, this is gonna be great when it goes in the refrigerator. It's gonna solidify, it's gonna be great. So here's the hot cake. There's the top, we can tell it was on the thing. And these I'm going to cover with the other ganache and send in with Dave to work. Or I could freeze the whole cake. That is up to me. These cakes are not gonna rise very much. Neither one of them rose. Even though they're different thicknesses, they didn't rise. It's not how this works. They are more like a torte, and it's not light like that rose levy where you're doing egg whites and stuff. This is completely different than I think anything else, and that's why I think it's so special. It's almost wet if it weren't so chocolatey. It's fudgy without being a flourless chocolate cake. So it is unique. It is delicious. It's gonna be delicious. And if you wanna look at my videos, I posted one today, and actually it wasn't even cut, but there are other videos I've done where I just love this cake. I've made it a ton of times. And if you're looking, there's a half and half cake that's half that, half carrot cake. I've been making it since 1993, 92. Oh my gosh, you guys picked Rose Levy Barenbaum's cake. So we are doing the Rose Levy. And what I can tell you about that is it's made in a 9-inch pan. And I got rid of 9-inch pans a long time ago. And watching her video, they even commented that they used to be popular and they're not anymore. So I do have a 9-inch pan, but it's 3 inches high. And my favorite Crown cookware, it's too expensive to ship it. It was like $30 to get one pan for shipping, and I'm just not gonna do it. But I'm gonna try to find a 2-inch high by 9-inch pan. You make the cake, you let it cool, you make the syrup, it's gotta be hot, you poke the cake, you put the syrup on, leave it overnight. And then you make the ganache, and the ganache frosts it, and that's the cake. It's very simple, it's very similar to this cake, but different, and the ingredients are a little bit different. Yep, it's in the new cake Bible. I think that they literally spent the last 30 years taking all the complaints about recipes, because a lot of times sponge cakes are dry. That's just the nature of the sponge cake sometimes. So they reconfigured it. They used some new science in the baking field with egg whites at the end. So you don't whip all the egg whites, you add an egg white at the end. And that lends to some stability, and then you can add more moisture and it balances out. So I think that'll be really fun. The height of the tin does matter. And I was doing my brownie experiment in the 8x8x3, and then I bought an 8x8x2, and it just wasn't enough to allow the brownie to get to its full potential. So it does matter, because with a sponge cake, you don't grease the sides. It needs to cling on and grab onto the side of the pan. So, and I'm gonna do a test, but I'm thinking that's not a problem if it's taller, but if it's shorter than it should be, you have a problem. But you also need bleached cake flour and bleached all-purpose flour and American butter, like a Land O'Lakes. So I will get her recipe up. It's from her book. I don't know if that's allowed or not, but it's in her new 30-year anniversary, the Cake Bible. And just so you guys all know, I taught myself how to bake. I did cake decorating for years. I was in Neiman Marcus catalog, and I specialized in sugar flours. That book taught me how to bake, and my book's broken. So I was like, do I really need the new one? But they often do updates, and so I splurged and I got the new one, and it's absolutely beautiful. I baked the cake, and then I made the ganache and put it on my cake. Obviously, you can see the cake through. I get it. What specifically about American butter is important? Is it the fat? Yes, because when you look at a lot of times our American butters don't say how much fat is in there, but if you notice, Plugra or Cabot will say an amount. Let me get my butter. So this is what I get at Restaurant Depot. European butter, 82%. That tells me that the rest of what is in here is water, protein, and sugar. Now, I don't know exactly how much. You'd have to look it up by brand. But if you don't think the amount of water that is, even if it's from 15 to 17% versus 20% water makes a difference, it does. And the reason that RLB uses bleached cake and bleached all-purpose flour and American butter is because the bleaching process makes the flour like roughed up so it absorbs more moisture. So the butter has more moisture, and what that does is creates a better, tender crumb. I love RLB. She's the best. Well, I hate to go, but I am going to go sit with Dave. It's 8:30 p.m. here, Eastern Standard Time. So I'll be doing a live with Rose Levy Berenbaum chocolate cake, 6 p.m. Wednesday evening, Eastern Standard Time here. I do a lecture, a demo. I explain all the ingredient function. I post the recipe in grams, and I demonstrate the whole recipe, answer questions, hang out, and do what we're doing right now. You guys are all the best. What an incredibly engaged, smart, kind audience. You guys aren't an audience, you're a group. You're a community. This makes my whole week, and it's something really exciting for me to look forward to. And we are going to eat this yummy, yummy cake. And I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye, everybody. You guys are the best. Bye, everyone. Good night. Happy baking. I'll see you next week.